Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, all you citizens of the world, it's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James here in Chicago, up in the 49th Ward, and we're glad you're tuning in or viewing us however you may get it. I want to thank Kev Mo for bringing us in with that song. We play it every week, Stand Up and Be Strong. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. And certainly are some crucial times we're in, and that music is very appropriate. Today, we're going to have two guests who are no strangers to this show. We're going to have the political analyst, reporter, and longtime activist Don Rose giving us his insights on what's going on in L.A., around the country, and with anti-Semitism. And we're going to have our own state representative, Kelly Cassidy, state rep from the 14th District here in Illinois, in Chicago. And she will talk a little bit about the most recent legislative session down in Springfield, Pride, and the general challenges that all of us are facing. On a sad note, the great performer Sly Stone has passed away. And we're going to use his music for the breaks throughout the show today. And good thing going on is there's a lot of resistance and people out there trying to make a difference and show their disapproval of what the current U.S. president is all about. And on the bad front, there is the U.S. president. There is the political party that empowers him. There is the challenges to the population from ICE running around grabbing anybody and everybody off the street. And not to mention Gaza, Ukraine, and the millions who are being challenged and on the move because of climate change and war. I'm going to do the sports report today, and it's a real simple one. Los Angeles soccer fans displayed their pro-immigration banners and anti-ICE banners at a recent game. That's pretty good. And I think if I can find it, I'm going to give you a quote from Jimmy Kimmel. He said to Trump, "Putting out a fire you purposefully started doesn't make you a firefighter. It makes you an arsonist with a hose." Okay, with all that said, how about a little music from Sly and the Family Stone, and we'll be right back with our first guest, Don Rose. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial, or however you're getting the Live from the Heartland show for the week of June 13th. Be right back.
Set out to do. Stand, there's a cross for you to bear, things to go through if you're going anywhere. Stand for the things you know are right. It's the truth that the truth makes them so alive. Stand, all the things you want are real. You have you to complete, and there is no deal.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland. Thank you, Sly Stone. I hope things are more peaceful up in heaven than they are in the streets of America. And now I'd like to bring on our first guest today, the one and only, the longtime journalist, political analyst, and activist, Don Rose. Good morning to you, Don Rose.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And when we talked about things to talk about today, the first thing you said was Los Angeles. And then we talked about some events around the country on the 14th. And if we got some time, we're going to talk about anti-Semitism and how it's being used against everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to L.A. Little did we know that things would break loose like they have. We knew last week in Chicago there were a number of demonstrators showed up when ICE went into a building, was pulling people out. A couple days later, Los Angeles has erupted. Give us your take on all of that.
Well, these demonstrations and protests are well within things we've seen before, and they are to be expected. It is not wise, of course, to have violence during these things. We're trying to persuade the country, that what ICE is doing in these crazy raids on, small businesses, on car washes, any place they think they might be able to find an undocumented immigrant. Unfortunately, they have the right to do it, but it is in total violation of what we were told was going to be getting rid of the criminals. So let's take that as part of a norm. The thing that's happening there, mobilizing the National Guard without the permission, cooperation of the state's governor, is unconstitutional. It is permitted only under certain emergencies, which Trump has declared. And sending in the military itself, sending in the Marines, who are a fighting force. They are not a stabilizing force as some army battalions could be, is another horrendous action. You're setting up Americans to fight Americans, an American military, sending the Marines for what? Now, this is only permitted again under certain emergency situations. If we were in fact invaded somehow, if there was an assault on the United States properties and so on by a crowd and so on, you might be able to declare these emergencies, but they're very clearly spelled out. Now, Trump has done this before. He has declared certain states of emergency so he can ban people from coming, ban whole nations from coming into the United States. He's very fond of creating these emergencies, and the dangerous thing here is if he is permitted to get away with it, we will have the absolute dictatorship that we feared would be on the way with Trump in any case. And this is really the scariest possible situation. Eventually, not his right to declare emergencies, but whether these emergencies actually exist is going to be up to the Supreme Court. And I'm very, very leery here. There's certain situations where I think the Supreme Court will stand in his way, but if it does not stand in his way to these created self-created emergencies that have no basis in fact and reality, we are all very much in deep, what.
Don, what is your sense of the response from both Mayor Bass in Los Angeles and Governor Newsom? I did see some of my further left friends criticizing Newsom for not calling for people to demonstrate and all that, but I actually did find Newsom talking for people to go out and demonstrate and do it peacefully. But your take on their response?
Well, I don't, I think their basic response is correct. Whether you like every word they've said, I'm not going to argue those small points. what Newsom has done is called Trump very clearly on his unconstitutional behavior. In effect, Mayor Bass. They also have a right to deal with violent demonstrations where violence exists. Let's face it, we've seen it on both sides in the past, and they have a right to crack down on violent demonstrations in their city. Whether you think the violence is justified or not is another issue.
Let me jump in here. Do you have any sense of how the military might act? I've heard that there are some leadership that may be left in there who are probably pretty positive in the sense that they don't like the troops being used, but I'm not sure where the rank and file is. I heard somewhere that 60% of the Army was non-white, and you and I both go back to 1968 when the National Guard was called here in Chicago. We went up to the Armory up on Broadway and tried to talk to the troops, and there were troops from Fort Hood, Texas, who refused to come. I don't know if it's going to get to that, but the use of the military by Trump certainly puts that on the agenda, so to speak.
Yeah, well, we've got a different kind of military now. We've got a military that's being run totally politically by the administration. You saw another little horror yesterday, I guess it was, where Trump gives a political speech before an army. At an army base, the one where he talks about restoring all the Confederate names to various army bases, including lauding Robert E. Lee. But that's yet another issue. But the dangerous thing here, in the course of this speech, the military, the army that you saw, was responding as if they were at a political rally. You heard them booing, not everybody, of course, but you heard sufficient numbers of these armed forces booing certain names. They were booing the name of Newsom, the governor, and of Bass, the mayor. Now, this is a very, very dangerous situation again. He is politicizing intentionally the military in a way we've never seen it. Now, when this happens, and if these people feel free, if they are called in, I don't know how we can judge the behavior of one particular fort that he was speaking at, army base. If you have a politicized military and they feel free to attack, you're going to have, an unspeakable situation in this country. So I think, I've always been one to point out what's going on that's wrong, but I've never, I think, been a panic peddler here. But at this point, feel very close to the panic point myself until we get this issue resolved. And I'm very worried about how long it might take and what might go on in Los Angeles.
This Los Angeles coincides a little bit what the call has been out for a while for No King Day. And there are hundreds and hundreds of places where demonstrations are planned this Saturday.
Thousands.
Yeah, thousands. And, we have a situation where Trump is also having his military birthday party parade in D.C. on the same day. And he's basically threatened protesters that he's going to lock them all up. Actually, the people who have called for No King Day have asked people to not go to D.C., but go to other places. Mm-hmm. What's your take on this No King Day with thousands of demonstrations going on around the country?
Well, I am urging everybody I know who is physically able to get out to one of these No King Day demonstrations at the nearest point. And no matter where you live, I don't know how wide our audience is, but there is a place accessible from almost any other place in the country to get to No King Day on Saturday. I would hope that this would turn out to be the largest protest demonstration in American history. It has that potential. It's been plotted for a long time. It is coming clearly at a time when we're having this big phony parade that Trump is creating for his birthday, and a quite improper display of fighting equipment. We are not given to military parades here. Other countries do it. You always used to see the Soviets do. Putin continues to practice there. It's kind of in effect, a threat and a warning. Look what we got here. Quite unnecessary. But this is something to stroke Trump's ego. And once again, part of the politicization of the military here. By itself, were we not seeing all these other things going on, it would not be a horrifying event, just a very wasteful thing. It's costing, what, $130-some million just to run a parade for a couple of hours. That think what this money could do if it were being distributed to feed the hungry in Africa and the Middle East and so on.
It would be a good use of the dough. Well, as a not-for-profit radio station, we're not to advocate. So we're just telling people that this is information, that there is a protest going on this Saturday at Daley Plaza in Chicago at noon, and there's one in Evanston at Fountain Square beginning at 10 a.m. That's point of information for all you people. Now, another thing that I think we ought to talk about a little bit, Don, is the use of anti-Semitism by Trump to attack anybody who protests against Gaza and the U.S.'s role in that and stands up for their universities, et cetera. Let's hear a little bit about it. You had a piece in your weekly column where you talked about anti-Semitism. You talked about your own position throughout time as a member of the Jewish faith. How do you see this anti-Semitism in the hands of Trump and the MAGA people playing out?
Well, he's using it. He's using anti-Semitism to create anti-Semitism here. We go back to the basics. Criticism of the Israeli government and the way it's conducting its war in Gaza and the way it is invading the West Bank and killing people there. Taking over property, et cetera, is horrifying. And I think its actions have been condemned by most of the world. And it's condemned by many, many Jews like myself. But there is a difference between criticism of the government of Israel and criticism of Jewry across the world. And that's where the problem is. Most often, or too often, people do not draw the distinctions between the Israeli government and what Jews as a whole do. Jews are all over the map on this. And we have to fight sometimes among ourselves as to our positions on what Israel is doing, even though I I personally support the existence of Israel and have wanted for a long time a two-state solution. Now, it's harder and harder to draw the distinction the worse Israel gets. As a matter of fact, Thomas Friedman in today's New York Times has a column very similar to the one that I published this earlier in the week. The concern that Israel itself is creating anti-Semitism, and it plays into the hands of Trump, who is a longtime supporter of Netanyahu and the excesses of the Israeli government. And he is using the theory that any criticism of the war, the conduct of the war, or of the Israeli government is itself anti-Semitism, which just creates more and more. As a Jew, I find it almost frightening. I can see why many students are scared witless now, because anti-Semitism is in effect getting a sanction.
Good point. Well, you know, one of the things that I brought up with you before, and a number of my guests who have been of the Jewish faith, is at a time when the Democrats are trying to get ready for a comeback with a lot of opportunity, given the actions of the current regime. We have a lot of young people, as well as people around the world, being more and more supportive of the Palestinian cause in the face of Netanyahu's U.S.-backed attacks. And I wonder how you think that's going to play out in the Democratic Party, because a lot of people are rooting for, the 2026 elections and hope we'll take back Congress, et cetera, et cetera. And I hope that too. But I don't know what the split in the party between the ranks of pro-Israeli, not necessarily in support of what's going on in Gaza, but not really taking a stand against it. Your thoughts on the problem facing the Democratic Party?
Well, if this is extended to its limit, to its natural limits, which happened during the last election that helped bring about the Trump administration, you have people so vigorously condemning the Democrats that they either didn't vote Democratic or they may have voted for Trump, or they may have voted for a third party or whatever. And you have a self-destructive aspect there. The Democrats have to find a common, balanced position where they can say no more help to a Netanyahu, the way Bernie Sanders is urging, and still express their support for the Jewish state. Now, if they can't find that balance, they're going to be, it's just going to be something that pulls the Democrats apart. And the last thing you want at a time like this, with Trump close to taking dictatorial powers totally, is a split in the Democratic Party. So I worry about that, and I think we have to settle that issue as calmly as we can, rather than make it the defining issue, which too many people did last time, and as a result, it helped elect Trump.
Yeah, I wonder how those Arabic communities up around Detroit are feeling now about their support for Trump.
Yeah.
Well, we got a lot of stuff ahead of us, and we're out of time, but you got 30 seconds of any positive encouragement for people?
My positive encouragement right now is that if the No King Days is as successful as we hope it will be, as I hope it will be, I know you can't take an official position. I can't. I think that will go a long way toward building to the midterms where we must take over the House.
Okay. Don Rose, it's always great to see you. I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days. It's been a long time on our Zooms. But you're a hell of a guy, and I'm really appreciative you came on the show. We'll talk to you soon. I know you'll be back next month, and I want to thank everybody who's been listening so far. We want to stay tuned here after we hear a little of Sly Stone before we bring on State Representative Kelly Cassidy, who will talk about Pride Month. We'll talk about the recent Illinois State Legislature session, and who knows what else. Be right back here on the left end of your dial with more Live from the Heartland. Citizens of the world, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 13th. And once again, thank you, Sly Stone, for that little bit of music we just heard. Next up is another longtime guest and a good friend, Kelly Cassidy. She is the state representative for the very proud 14th District of the state of Illinois. And she's just back from the legislative session, and I thought I ought to grab her and hear a little bit about what on. And that's before all this stuff started breaking loose in the streets. But we probably knew it was coming, and it all flows together. So good day to you, Kelly Cassidy. I'm so glad you're joining me. And how about telling us about Springfield, Illinois, and what's been going on down there?
It was a session, man. We are home. We did pass a balanced budget. It was a mix of cuts and corporate loophole closures and some fees that people don't love too much, but we got to pay for the things. And an expectation that we're probably going to have to go back at some point after the federal cuts become clear. But there's a lot we did get done and a lot we didn't get done. On my bills front, a project that I've been working on for a few years finally has come to fruition, and that is the rewrite of the Sexual Assault Services and Emergency Treatment Act that dictates what happens when a survivor appears at an emergency room and the procedures for collecting evidence and how they're to be treated and billing and all sorts of deeply boring things. But ultimately, what I was able to do through these last few years of working with a lot of different stakeholders is flip the lens of that law and put everything through a survivor lens. So, lots of things that were, sort of in place because it was easier for the hospital to do have been changed to make it more about that survivor's experience and how they're handled. So I'm very proud of that. And that's going to the governor's desk. Things we didn't do, we didn't handle the transit cliff. We didn't pass any ethics reform. Some very disappointing things. On the transit cliff side of things, I'm getting a lot of constituents concerned about potential service cuts. And they're right to be concerned. But, we have been working for the last, I think the speaker appointed the working group last year. And they've been meeting regularly and updating our caucus. And really until probably the last three to 5 days of session, the messaging from that working group was we're working on governance and reforms first, and we'll deal with funding later because reforms are a legislative calendar issue and the funding is a calendar year issue. And we know we'll have time to deal with it. That was the message up until that last week. And then suddenly it was urgent that we figure out funding. And, this is one of those pieces where, everybody's got an idea for how to pay for it that doesn't touch them.
Let me ask a little bit more about
Yeah.
transit stuff.
Yeah.
I was at Mariano's this week down on Foster and Sheridan, and there was a guy with a CTA uniform on outside, and I said, "Hey, brother, how's it going? Long live the CTA, blah, blah, blah." And then we got into a discussion, and he said there are already lots of cuts going on. So I'm not sure what the dynamics are. You passed this transit bill, does that affect not only CTA, but the Metras and...
It's all of it. Yeah. So we've got, CTA, Metra, Pace buses, plus the transportation for people with disabilities. They're all together, but not. There's multiple service boards managing all of them. There's lots of duplication, and they're all struggling for different reasons. And so trying to get those pieces sorted out while also figuring out what of these funding issues are governance based and what of the funding issues are, revenue shortfalls, because there's both, right? And I know that, the folks that are appointed to this working group are pretty amazing. They're absolute transit nerds, to be perfectly honest with you. They're the best possible people to be dealing with this. The working group is led by Representative Evadina Delgado, who used to be the intergovernmental affairs person for CTA, knows the inner workings of all of these entities. And it's no secret to any of us that, our transit systems have been struggling for years. They're inadequate. We can and should do better. And it does need to start with governance. I wish that we had not had that sort of flip the script and, try to force funding in 3 or 4 days problem. Because, the things we were looking at, a lot of us were pushing back on one of the biggest segments of funding was to come from delivery fees. So there's a great argument to be made that, this is a transit-oriented funding issue, that, additional delivery vehicles on the roads cause more wear and tear. People could take use transit to get there. But there's also the very real issue of this being a more regressive tax. The people that can least afford to pay it will. So some of us in the Progressive Caucus were trying to push back on that a little bit, try to get maybe a threshold in place so that we could exclude orders of under $50 or something, so that it could hit people less hard. But there just wasn't time to discuss these things. There were other entities pushing for funding solutions that were never ever going to get off the ground. The bulk of the labor coalition wanted to add a sales tax on services. Well, that's kind of been the penny that keeps coming back around. Every time we have a funding problem, somebody brings up a tax on services. Before you know it, we have to exclude everything that has a lobbyist. So legal fees can't be the services that you pay taxes on, and financial services can't be charged taxes, and fur storage or whatever. And we end up back down to, hairdressers and cosmetologists and, again, regressive funding bases. So, we've got to spend the time to get this right.
Would you predict if there's another session that you'll get it through? And who is the opposition? Is it the Republicans? Is it a chunk of Democrats?
It was everything, right? Every possible funding strongly unified lobby against it, right? One of the first surcharge. Well, that got the entire Collier County governments united for the first time in a million years against that, saying, they're taking our money to build the CTA. None of this is true. The downstate entities were pushing back on the delivery tax because it's, your pizza's paying for the CTA rat hole, an enemy.
Yeah. Well, let's switch over to the ethics legislation that was supposed to happen or you wanted to happen. Where is that at and what it's all about?
Last thing that happened, it looked like there wasn't going to be one. There's a practice in Springfield of ethics and election reform bills being put through an omnibus or agreed bill. Chambers and the governor agree on what's going in there in advance, and a lot of things get glommed together. We don't take individual votes on individual ideas. And, that's good sometimes. That's helpful sometimes. But in this instance, we were getting down to the wire, and there was no word of an omnibus. And then our Ethics and Elections Committee chair got notification that the Senate had an amendment ready, and this is what they wanted to do. And we convened because there were two items that had never been discussed that were being presented as going into it from the Senate's perspective. And one was a change to the election calendar and what it means to blow the caps. And it's complicated, but it all boils down to Senate President Don Harmon operated in what he thought was good faith and the right way to handle blown caps. And the law and the Board of Elections is fining him. And I thought it was originally like $4 million. Today, there's a headline that it's $9 million. And he wanted to make a retroactive change to the law to get out from under that. And then the other one was an exemption to the prohibitions on holding fundraisers during session days for people who are running for federal office. There are several members of the Senate running for Congress. The lieutenant governor is running for the Senate. It's a deeply bad look.
Well, okay on that. Where are things at? We're in a dire situation here in the United States, and I'm wondering, as someone who has been in the forefront of equality in marriage and people's rights, no matter what their gender, et cetera, where do you see things at, and what are the challenges? I mean, I know that there are segments of the old GOP, the grand old party, the Republicans, who are really going to go after same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. That's an issue. And my son is married to a guy, and my daughter is married to a woman, mm-hmm. So real close to home stuff.
Yeah.
You as a leader in the forefront of all that, how about giving us your take on what you think is going on and what we need to do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, things are probably more fraught than they've ever been in my lifetime. And I lived through the AIDS crisis. Point to that and many other points in our history to remind younger folks who might be feeling the weight of this. They've been trying to erase us since the beginning of time, and we always come out on top. And that's what I have to continue to hang on to. But ultimately, here in Illinois, we have put protections into place to ensure that we are as reinforced as we can be in the protections that we have on the books in Illinois. Access to marriage equality as an Illinois law. So unless there is a federal ban, even if they overturn the federal right to marriage, our marriages are fine. Our ability to marry will be fine. The same is true of abortion and access to gender-affirming care and the ability to do so without fear of criminalization. Those laws are as strong as any in the nation. We are safer here than anywhere else. And we have to be prepared to fight back. We have to be pushing back on these harmful narratives. I spent the last 2 weeks of session facing daily censure motions from the Republicans who every day get up and rant about trans kids. And I finally got sick of it and started pushing back and talking about the harmful impact of what they're doing. They are obsessed with children's genitals. They use this moment every day to bully children, suicidal ideation possible. They have blood on their hands. And I've shared that publicly on the House floor multiple times. The very last action we took before we gavelled out for the spring was to finally allow a vote on one of their motions to censure me. And most of my Democratic colleagues stood with me and voted against their motion. And it was soundly defeated. But, at the end of the day, they don't want to be held responsible for their actions. They think that they can erase some words from the record and undo the harm they've done. And that's simply untrue. And I will not stop calling them out for it.
Kelly Cassidy, are there any Republican members of the state legislature that you know of who have gay kids or trans kids? Because it seems to me that there's plenty of right-wing gay people out there.
Yeah. None that I am aware of, but it is statistically impossible that there aren't some.
Can you tell me, were there some Democrats who did not support you?
There were some Democrats who sat on the floor and didn't vote.
Oh, I hope there's some kind of retribution for all of that sooner or later.
Well, we're going to start with some.
Good
We're going to
discussion.
start with some yes, with some discussion of the issue. Absolutely. I will say I do appreciate when people show you who they are.
Yeah, that's good. Has the challenge to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was really a hallmark and I thought a step forward in our government and the way the country was going until the debacle that we're now enduring. How is that challenge that the president put out to get rid of all DEI? How is that affecting us in Illinois, and does it?
Well, again, in some ways it doesn't. Because we are, they love to say states' rights, until they don't. But here's a fun one. The House Republican leader, the minority leader, introduced a bill to create a scholarship fund for STEM studies for women and girls. And she got called out for it because it is, stands in direct opposition to the president's directives on DEI. And so she amended her bill to make it available to anyone. So, she was for DEI until she was told not to be.
Oh, well, and our governor is speaking out a little bit on things these days. I mean, I see him on Facebook, I see him on Instagram, I see him on the TV. I was going to talk to you about how about we get him on the show here. And I'm going to share this. The one time I did have any contact with the governor was when he was running for Congress opposing our good friend Jan Schakowsky. And he came to the Heartland Cafe. And I said, well, you're welcome here, but we're for Jan. I was not really that friendly. So I'd like to make it up to him someday. And I'll help on that. But how do you think he's doing, and what do you think his plans are?
I think he has been a more amazing partner than I could have expected. And honestly, I am so grateful that he is in the role he's in, and I hope that he stays in it. Whether he runs for president or not, I really hope he runs for re-election. I don't know the answer. But he is exactly who we need right now. So that's me manifesting that out to the universe.
I know he has been amazing.
Yeah. And then, on Thursday, there will be these congressional hearings and I know that this airs a different day, but, we're looking forward to seeing what happens with him and Hochul and Walz when they get called before Congress to discuss sanctuary policies this week.
You in our back and forth on our text, you said you talked about the sliding tile puzzle of the political landscape. What do you mean by that?
Well, with all of the things that are opening up, so we've got Lieutenant Governor Stratton stepping out of the LG role to run for the Senate. You've got Raja Krishnamurthy stepping out of Congress to run for the Senate. You've got, you've got Schakowsky's retirement. You've got the rumored retirement of Danny Davis. Robin Kelly running for U.S. Senate has folks running for her seat. And, those then just keep stacking down. It's, then who's going to run for the seat that Laura Fine is holding while she runs for Congress? Who's going to run for so like Robert Peters is in a midterm, so he doesn't have to give up his seat. But then there are House members that are maybe looking at seats as well. So all of those shifts are going to have a pretty seismic impact on our political landscape as people move up and over and around.
Yeah, well, I'd like to go into that even more. It's just, the one that I'm not too worried about who's going to run for the Senate. I mean, it seems like the governor got right behind Stratton right away. Yeah. And I did like Laura Underwood, and I thought they kind of undercut her a little bit too quickly. And but I think she's formidable and will stick around.
I was worried about losing that seat, honestly. Like, I don't know what their motivation. I don't know what their motivation was, but I like it. Just kind of made me cringe a little bit. It made me nervous.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, she's been great.
She's awesome.
Become a maroon district, I guess, even now blue district. let me, what you got any more on the Jan Schakowsky seat, which, we got Daniel Biss is jumping in on it.
Yeah.
We've got that influencer woman, I don't know what her name is, if she's still running.
The Edgewater Library protest this week, apparently. I wasn't there. I didn't see her, but.
You got a favorite in any of these races? You're too political and suave to tell us what you think.
I am all in with this. I was at his launch yesterday. He first of all, he and I have just been partners in so much work together that that he's practically family. But this was an unconventional launch. This was not a big campaign rally like you often see for a launch. This was a pretty intimate gathering of parents of trans kids, and sharing the importance of having someone who so intimately understands what this community is up against, being in this seat means and feels like to us.
Well, Daniel Biss has been a guest on this show a number of times in different capacities, and he did take a little heat from some progressives over his handling of the new Dyke Stadium building.
Yeah.
But that goes on, that kind of stuff. We'll see. We'll ask Dan to come on the show again, and that'll be good. I'm not sure how many minutes we have left, but you got any encouragement, any predictions, any challenges, any pathways to a better world that you want to share?
I want to make sure that folks are really leaning into looking out for each other, in particular as we head to protests, this weekend and beyond. What we've seen in Los Angeles makes very, very clear what they want is for us to react with violence. We cannot give them what they want. Being mindful of protecting folks who might not be as experienced at protests and making sure that you're helping get them out of danger if you need to. We got to be on swivel. We are all make sure that we're taking care of each other.
And Kelly Cassidy, what are you doing for fun these days?
I'm leaning very much into trying to produce as much food as I can this year in my garden. I've been sort of amping it up every year, and this year we've expanded even more. And so I'm every morning I sort of run out excitedly to see what's sprouting and what's growing. And there's just a really wholesome, good feeling that comes from that every day, that I can focus on the fact that I have 5 pumpkin plants growing, and that my sugar snap peas just seem like the happiest little tendril beasts ever. That's what I'm looking at.
You're turning out a lot of food on your back 40.
Exactly. My back 40, which is a driveway and a tiny garden patch.
Yeah, it's tiny. I got a lot of room out back, but I got so many trees that nothing, I don't have much luck.
For us, it was really the tornado that changed everything.
We lost a few trees over there.
We lost more than a few trees. Like we had 4 around our house, actually 5 if you count one in my neighbor's yard. And so we went from a complete shade garden to a mix of sun and shade that has allowed us to really amp things up a lot.
I want to ask you one last question. I know you like to travel when you can, and you're a very busy person, but are you planning to go out west again this summer? And do you have any interaction with people of a more progressive persuasion out there in that state? And do you talk to them? And is there any hope that, let's just be honest, it's Wyoming, if any of that will turn in a more favorable direction as people observe the horrors of what our government is doing to people all over the world?
So yes, I am trying to carve out a little bit of time to get out to my happy place. I kind of joke that every year what I really need to do when I get off the house floor is just go directly out there and sit down and cry by the river and get it all out. I do look forward to getting out there and trying to get back out with the kids again. I do have a lot of good friends out there that are of a more progressive lean. My very good friend, Sarah Burlingame, who heads Equality Wyoming, who I bet would be happy to come on at some point, is one of the most, she doesn't ever, her light never fades. She's just always ready for the next thing. And there is a pendulum swing there. She's been elected to their state house in the past, and so there can be gains made. Even in the heart of the deep red West, there's a lot of folks who really just wish we could live and let live.
Okay, you got any other little words of wisdom or plans, or that's it for today?
Every Thursday night and Friday morning, the visibility crews of the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward, Network 49, and other neighbors are out on Thursday nights. It's Pratt and Ridge from 4 to 6, and Friday mornings it's 7:30 a.m. until about 8:30 or 9 at Greenview and Sheridan, or Greenleaf and Sheridan. I'm sorry.
I was there last week. I should send some photographs to Hal to put up with it.
Yeah,
Kelly,
it's
Cassidy,
really fun.
It's always a pleasure. Say hello to all your family, your dogs, your cats, whatever you got going on over there with the snap peas. And I'll see you soon.
Whole lot of mammals over here, man.
I'll see you in the neighborhood.
Sounds good. Take care.
Everybody else, we want to thank you for tuning in to Live from the Heartland today. We're really appreciative that people listen and make comments, and we do appreciate your support. A number of people have contributed. We can't do this for nothing. And I have a new book out called En La Frontera. It's based on basketball in the barrio, which allowed me to take lots of pictures in Juarez and in El Paso. And for a donation to this show, we will be glad to send you one of them. Our email is thelivefromtheheartlandshow@gmail.com. And last week we had the All Chicago Tenant Alliance on, and they talked about rent strikes, and it's sort of happening. There's some in the 49th Ward going on, some in Uptown, some out in Logan Square. These are a great group of young people, and we also had the jazz journalist Howard Mandel talking all things jazz and festivals, etc. Want to thank Kelly Cassidy and Don Rose for being our guests today. They're some of my favorite and regular participants in the show. And I want to thank our engineer, Hal James. I want to thank our producers, Tom Clark, Katie Hogan, and Lynn Orman. And that's enough. We're going to hear a little bit more of Chic Street Man. Are you doing the best you can as we go out? And we'll see you next week with more Live from the Heartland. All power to the people. Over and out. We want to thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show. New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Episodes air each following Thursday on CAN TV, 9 p.m. in Sweet Home Chicago on Channel 21, or streaming everywhere else at cantv.org. Audio episodes go live on WLUW each Saturday, 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM, or streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org. They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Gone to limb. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing